Hi people and hello my Chilli con Carnage crew, it's Chilli here from Live Listen Erased, and I am bringing you a special kind of episode. I don't know, this is going to be a bit of a weekly thing I reckon I'm going to be doing, but I am doing it at the moment from home. More likely I'll be doing this in the future from my car, so you'll be hearing a loud engine in the background, but who knows. Anyway, what I'm going to be doing in this little weekly segment from here on out is just talking about the music that I've listened to throughout the week. On top of that, we're also going to be discussing music news and upcoming albums that are going to be released. And in regards to all of, my commentary in regards to everything that is coming through. So I'm very curious. I mean, I don't have a name for what this is going to be. People comment below because this is just an audio file at this stage. It'll just have a pretty little picture with my some kind of animation flowing for the background. So you can watch this, or rather have it on in the background while you're doing little tasks or something like that. Guess we're truly living up to the podcast section of this real thing. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to be launching first into the music I've listened to in the week, followed by the news, and then we're going to be talking about the music that's coming up in the next couple of days. So I wanted to kick things off because, at the beginning of this week I was listening to Innoculum by Tool, and this is an album that I know a lot of people will say is very much the bronze medal album, I guess, of Tool's catalogue. Probably the worst, even, many might say, if there is such a thing that you can say about Tool having a worst album. They would point to Fear Inoculum. For me, I don't see Fear Inoculum as the worst album. I, for one, really don't like their debut record, Opiate, I don't know. Anyway, but, when it comes to Fear Inoculum, I kind of had a feeling that I might even cover this in an episode coming up in the future. It's certainly an interesting record. Obviously, it was the first one in something like 13 years. It was a long break for Tool fans. There was no music. On top of that, Tool hadn't even released their music to streaming platforms such as, Spotify, Apple Music, all of those devices. And it was always one of those things when Tool were going to release their record. I said to myself, you know what, I might actually have to go out and purchase this album because, when it gets released, it's not going to be on any kind of streaming services, and I wanted to listen to it. Obviously, everyone wants to listen to it. And Tool's a bit of a funny one because, at the end of the day, I remember there was an interview that Manu Keating was having, and he was talking about how he thinks he missed the boat when it came to Tool streaming and receiving royalties in regards to it. I think the band were a little bit divided in regards to putting their music up on the platform. I think Mandy had mentioned that he wanted to do it sooner, but, internally the band did not want to. And I recall also Mandy had also saying that, when it comes to the music, they would rather have the fans listen to the albums rather than a song here and there. And I can get that when you're coming across Tool and all the rest of that. But, back to Fear Inoculum. It's a long album. It really is. It's an hour and 26 minutes in length, and it certainly has a lot of tracks that I think all the music on here is over 10 minutes in length. I could be wrong there. But, it's certainly one of these albums that you just kind of look at and just go, oh my gosh, there is a lot of long songs, and I don't think many people will hate that about Tool. It certainly is, it seems to be one of those things that brings people to their music. I'm just going over the list here. Yes, every track is over 10 minutes in length, which is very, it's a lot. It's foreboding, I guess, when you're coming up to it. Open up with a 10-minute track, Fear Inoculum, then Numa, and then there's a little bit of the instrumental tracks, and I know that pissed a lot of people off. I saw Tool actually for the tour of this album, and they strictly said no photography allowed, no mobile phones during the concert. In fact, I saw more than one people getting, actually I saw a handful of people getting kicked out by security guards when they started filming the concert. It was very strict in regards to it, and the opening act was Author and Punisher. I had heard of Author and Punisher before coming up to the concert, and I was very interested to hear them. And they were the loudest thing I had ever seen up until that point. They were crushingly loud. That's like I could barely breathe when they were playing their music. And if you haven't heard of Author and Punisher, it's a very interesting artist that you should probably check out because the guy, he's like this mechanical engineer. I believe also, I think he did electrotechnology or something like that, and he made his own instrument, so it's not like you can easily replicate, even though he does industrial metal type of stuff, you can't easily replicate what he is achieving. It's this weird weird contraption. You know, if you haven't seen it, go check out the videos on Author and Punisher, and, you know, talking about his his instrument, how he made it, and how he moves it, because the thing weighs a freaking ton, I think. You know, like, there are several people just picking this thing up and disassembling it and moving it to the next, you know, set up to the other ones, because of everything that's involved. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. But Fear Inoculum itself, I loved this album. You know, it's certainly a good record, but I think it lives up to that whole meme of, you know, the guy biting the metal, shaking the champagne over everyone, and then you see further up the podium, and there's the rest of the people who are winners. And I clearly remember when this album came out, that was the meme that was going around. It's like, Fear Inoculum finally drops, and there's Fear Inoculum shaking the champagne, biting the metal, you know, kissing the girl, doing all that, and then further up the podium, it's every single album that they've released. And I kind of agree with it. You know, it's not the best thing that they've released, but then again, looking at what they have released, it's unsurprising, I guess, that it isn't the best thing that they've released either. Their standard is just so high when it comes to music. But I will say also, the concert that I went to was the first time they ever played Tempest, which is like a 16-minute long track. And I'm pretty proud of that. You know, I loved that song. I thought it was a fantastic track in regards to what was on the album. It just takes a little while getting there, you know, and I think it drags its feet. And that's probably one of the biggest setbacks with this album. All the tracks that are really long kind of have this winding path where they get to the point eventually, and I believe that's really what it is. It's listener fatigue at the end of the day when you're listening to this album. You cull all the crap in between, the little sound effects and stuff like that, with, like, you know, Legion and Conga, you know, or what was the other one, Chocolate Trip, or, you know, that other one, Latini Contra, like, I can't pronounce that, and they had to cull them when they made the CD version of this, and then you eventually get what is the actual album, I suppose you could say. But it also, I guess, to a lot of Tool fans, it doesn't have these hidden messages, or at least if there is any, no one's really come forth and told anyone what is on the album that's hidden, as opposed to, you know, what we have with 10,000 Days, which contained a hidden track when you mix two of the songs off that and layered it on top of another one, which I think was 10,000 Days, then you layered it on top with 10,000 Days Part 1 and Virginity Trays. Or, yeah, I think it was that one. You know, and you got the hidden song that was contained. Or Lateralis, of course, with the infamous Fibonacci sequence. And, the whole changing the song's playlist to play it out in the correct fashion. So, Fear Inoculum didn't have this... didn't have that kind of hidden meaning. And it really... I don't know if the internet really banded together to try and find something. It certainly didn't feel like it was compared to last time. So, anyway, Fear Inoculum was one of the albums that I've listened to this week. The other one as well was Machine Head, and we're talking about, of course, the Burning Red. This album, I'm going to die on this hill by saying I love this album, and I think it's fantastic. You know, the Burning Red was the first Machine Head album that I actually listened to back in the day. It's the album that got me into the band as well, because, you know, I remember back in the day I got Message in a Bottle, which was a cover of the Police track, and I think I listened to that like 27 times in a row. I remember this is back on when you had, Windows Media Player, and it had a play count next to it, and you could do like your ratings out of 5 stars. And Message in a Bottle was that track that I had, and I remember just watching that counter go up, you know, to 27. And I love that track, and I guess, you know, if you're looking over the Burning Red compared to their catalogue a few years prior with, you know, Burn My Eyes, fantastic debut record, The More Things Change, bit of a sleeper, So For More Effort, and the Burning Red was this pretty big change for the band, you know, in leading up to, in particular as well, Supercharger. The Burning Red was almost this new metal approach, and from memory as well, I think Rob Flynn was also sporting that kind of cornrows look. I might be wrong there, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. I think he was like sporting cornrows at the time like that, and, you know, it was a whole different kind of era of Machine Head, and I know a lot of people really don't like it. It had some rapping and stuff like that. I think it was on Desire to Fire, but then there's these really heavy tracks on here, you know, from this day, and I think it was 5 as well, which is such a brutally honest track. And, you know, if you haven't listened to the lyrics on there, it's To give you a quick rundown, it's kind of like Korn's Daddy song to a degree, so that, heads up in regards to that one. But then you got, these other songs as well, The Blood, The Sweat, The Tears, Nothing Left, I thought was fantastic, Silver and all that. All these great tracks from start to finish. It's just a record that I absolutely love, and I'm pretty sure I ranked this album as one of my top 10 nu metal albums. I know I'm going to get a bit of flack in regards to calling Machine Head nu metal. This is as close as they ever come. And whenever I say nu metal, I mention it as a kind of umbrella term. There's no real way to define nu metal. I always considered the nu metal genre this whole umbrella term that collected a whole bunch of musicians around about this time. And many of these musicians that you would call nu metal artists for the era have since gone on and changed their tunes and done different stuff. For example, Soulfly. I considered the very first record by Soulfly to be a nu metal sounding album, but you wouldn't call the stuff that they've done since, technically nu metal. Or Deftones, for example, as well, with Around the Fur. And, the list can go on to other acts as well. Obviously, there's the mainstays like Korn or Limp Bizkit, but outside of that realm, you could list a whole bunch of artists that were part of the whole nu metal experience and have since gone on and changed their tune and done other stuff or whatever you want to say. Machine Head is definitely one of those groups. The Burning Red is the closest they ever got to this whole nu metal sound, and I think it's a great record. It is certainly a different one to what you would experience later on and earlier. It's a very different record and one that is very divisive amongst the fan base, but I like this album as a whole. It's just a fantastic album that I believe is fantastic, that everyone should listen to, so I can't really speak high enough. Speaking of divisive albums, another one that I listened to was AFI and December Underground. Now, this is an album I remember when it came out at the time, and I just absolutely hated it because Miss Murder, and there was this whole divergence to what AFI was from back in the late 90s, this hardcore punk kind of group. Then December Underground comes along and you're like, what the hell is Miss Murder? What is this track that came out? And of course, Love Like Winter, they're gone electronic, they're gone crap, they look like absolute emo pop territory. What the fuck happened? And it just, it's a terrible looking sounding album, at least back in my days, back when I hated emo and everything that was around it. For me, it was like thrashers. That's it. Just listen to thrash metal. But I went back and listened to the full album for the first time yesterday, and I gotta say, this album, it slays. It's freaking amazing. If you can look past the radio-friendly tracks, I suppose you could say, like Miss Murder, I can give a pass to, actually. Despite the fact I might have heard that 1,000 times on the radio, I think Miss Murder gets a pass. Maybe Love Like Winter is a bit, but there is still a lot of songs in between here that still hit hard. They still call back to their old school punk methodology with like Affliction, or I think it was The Interview as well, and all these other ones. I think it was Kiss and Control or something like that. There were still some really hard hitting songs on here, and it just took me by surprise, I guess. I was kind of expecting this whole airy-fairy kind of thing, but I must digress that this album actually was fantastic from near start to finish. Fantastic. I know it gets heralded as the best record they've ever done. That's up for debate, of course, amongst the fan base. I don't know if I want to say shut up, shut your mouth and open your eyes, or Sing the Sorrow. One of these two. Others might say The Art of Drowning or Black Sails in the Sunset. Others might say later on in their albums. But AFI, I find they're an interesting band because they're certainly a band that have been a chameleon effect throughout their history. With their early days of hardcore, moving on into, I guess, almost like horrorcore, with The Art of Drowning, and then pop kind of territory with Sing the Sorrow, and then of course emo territory with December Underground, and then further along they move into this kind of light rock stuff with Crash, Love and Burials, and even up till this day with Bodies. They've still got, I don't know, I mean, I did a review on that album. They've changed their sound over time. They're certainly one of these bands that have been respected over several years, but they're just certainly not a band that stays still, I guess you could say. So it's an interesting one. I think they're really cool. They're coming out to Australia soon, actually. They're going to be performing Ooh, who were they performing alongside with? I'm trying to recall now, actually. I have to do a quick Google search because, whoever the act was, it was a pretty big name. And I think, from memory, they were opening with... Just doing a quick search, sorry, people. There was Green Day's, maybe? Was it Green Day? Oh, hell yeah, okay. So, yeah, Green Day are coming to Australia as well. I forgot to mention, didn't forget to mention, I just forgot that fact. And I think AFI were opening for them. I think that's where I heard. So, from memory, I think my friend was telling me about the, the Green Day concert, which is celebrating 30 years of Dookie and also 20 years of American Idiot. Both of these albums, by the way, I've done a retro review on, and they're out on my channel now, so you can go and watch that. So next year, that tour will be taking place, and if they're playing apparently both of these albums in full, and obviously AFI is going to be the opening act. So that would be a really sick concert to see, because I've always wanted to see AFI. I wanted to see what they would do. It'd be interesting. Green Day are supposed to be this spectacular live band. Always heard great things about them. Say what you will, I know they cop a lot of flack, but at the end of the day, their music got famous because people started liking it. You can call them selling out or sellouts and shit like that, but well, that's up to you, I guess, at the end of the day, if you want to say that. Now, in regards to this is an obscure one I'm just going to mention here, but Fresh Maggots is an artist that is very, very obscure. You certainly wouldn't have heard of them. They've only got about 2,000 or 3,000 monthly listeners. And I listened to this album recently because I was doing a bit of research for an episode that I might be putting out shortly. And it's going to be, the longest gaps between albums. And Fresh Maggots, I think, was the third biggest gap between records, something like 50-something years, 53 years maybe. And it was their debut record, Hatched, which was 1971. And they had another album out, but it would be in 2020. It's obviously massive gap between them. But they had this cult following, Fresh Maggots. It sounded very weird, and I'm like, who the hell are Fresh Maggots? I'm going to check this out. And I'm listening to it, and they're essentially this psychedelic kind of rock. They sound like psychedelic 60s rock, but more adaptive to the 70s. It's, as I said, 1971 this album came out. And there's some very electronic sections. There's some acoustic parts, like on this track Quickie, which I heard was like a 1 minute 20 track. But then they got other ones like Rosemary Hill, which is interesting. Doll Song, the very first track, was just very odd. And I think it's this... I can understand why there's a cult following. It does sound pretty good. It's a pretty cool sounding record. I understand it's been reissued several times over its history. I don't know if any members are still around from Fresh Maggots. I believe it's only a duo. But, at the end of the day, this is certainly an interesting band that I just wanted to give a shout out to or mention. If you are feeling like listening to some early 70s or late 60s kind of psychedelic rock and want to hear something new, Fresh Maggots might be the album Hatched, which is the album, sorry. So Fresh Maggots might be something that you want to check into because, it's certainly an interesting album. I thought that was pretty cool. So I just want to give a shout out. And then lastly, of course, for this week that I want to mention albums, it's going to be Sting. And I got to say, I got this massive soft spot when it comes to Sting. And in particular, the album that I was listening to was... What is it? It's the Best Of album that he did. It was an album that I got some time ago. I remember, I think I borrowed this from the library back in the day. And it was just, a compilation record from like his early works, 80s and 90s, something like that. And I'm just trying to find it, sorry. But, it was one of the first Sting albums I had. I certainly had a few tracks from, back from his throughout his career, but this is the Fields of Gold, the Best Of Sting, 1984 to 1994, which many will consider his best years, of course. And tracks like When We Dance, if you love somebody, set them free. Fields of Gold, of course, brings back massive memories for me. But just being in Southeast Asia, sitting on a hammock, just having a beer, and it's just interesting what music can do, ingrained into your memory, because sitting back in that hammock, just having a beer, chilling, enjoying life right then and there, listening to Fields of Gold, It's like you having your own field. Like maybe one day you will have your fields of gold moment, just sitting out somewhere, chilling, listening to this song, because it takes you away, and it's just a fantastic track. Of course, other ones, Englishman in New York, and there was another one as well. Also, sorry, it's Probably Me. That's right. I wanted to mention this song because it is a track which features Eric Clapton, and I think is certainly one of the best duo songs that has ever been written, in particular around about this time. For those who are unaware, obviously Eric Clapton is one of the most famous guitarists, old slow hands himself, but Eric Clapton, they did this song for Lethal Weapon, the series. This one was used on the Lethal Weapon 4 soundtrack, and I love this tune. It's just slow paced, has this little acoustic kind of picking throughout the original runtime. The bass line is just mesmerizing, and then it has a saxophone going to it, which really is a callback to the Lethal Weapon series, in particular the early stuff. When you hear the instrumentals, if you're unaware, I love Lethal Weapon. I think it's the best buddy cops thing ever written, ever done. I love the entire series, and if you've ever watched Lethal Weapon, you'll know the saxophone thing, which is like every time something happened, you would have a little saxophone, little instrumental part, in between, I'm too old for this shit, and the saxophone in the background. But, It's Probably Me contains this saxophones and, obviously Eric Clapton's beautiful guitar solo, as always, and Sting's guitar, bass work. And it's a fantastic song. I think that is just one you got to listen to. So that's the albums of my week in particular. Let's jump straight into the music news. One of the biggest ones that came out from this week, of course, was the CKY frontman and Alien Ant Farm in an altercation. And in regards to that one, it's claimed that it was in self-defense. This is big news because obviously CKY have been kicked off the tour in regards to this incident, which saw that, obviously there was an attack, and it's just very weird that this whole thing went down. And I remember because for months I've been seeing ads saying, Alien Ant Farm and CKY are coming out to Australia, they're going to tour, they're going to be performing together. And obviously that's not going to go ahead now. So it's certainly a bit of an odd one because the pairing itself I always thought was peculiar. You had Alien Ant Farm, who were only famous for obviously their one song, Smooth Criminal, the cover, and then you had maybe Movies. If you knew the band, you might know the track Movies as well. But anyway, you obviously had this track as well that they knew of. And then CKY are obviously very big if you followed, of course, Jackass and Bam Margera in particular, and his series, the CKY series. So of the band there, 96 Quite Bitter Beans, Disengage the Simulator and all that stuff. And obviously they've had their frontman, guitarist, he left the band under pretty questionable, animosable, terms few years ago now, and he started his own band, 96BB or 96 Bitter Beans, and it's been pretty successful for him. I think he's done well. He re-recorded a bunch of CKY material, of course. He also recorded his own album, and it's not bad. It was certainly interesting to see, to say the least, and so obviously CKY, as they are now, they got a new guitarist and all that, and it kind of felt like, okay, you got the has-beens of the nu metal series genre. I know CKY is not you can't, what the hell is CKY under? But anyway, you got the has-beens of that era of music, because let's face it, CKY haven't done anything in years, anything worthwhile in years. So it felt like two has-beens just put together, just trying to sell some tickets in regards to it. And they could, if any one of these bands toured by themselves in Australia, they probably wouldn't be able to do it. You put them together, and it's like, okay, we might be able to just sell out. Who knows? But it always felt so forced because, if I was paying money to go and see them, there'd probably be 2 or 3 tracks I want to hear by Alien Ant Farm. CKY would be interesting, but can you really say it's worthwhile because it's not really the original lineup, it's not the original band? Do they sound good? I don't know. So I always thought the CKY, that whole thing was really weird, And I think there's going to be a lot of disappointed fans at the end of the day, but I kind of am glad that they split up and did their own things now. You might see something better. I mean, Ant Farm, they did record their album earlier this year, and I panned it. I don't know if it's going to get mentioned on my top 10 worst albums of the year. It's certainly a contender for it. I know I copped some flack in regards to the review maybe being a bit harsh, and someone said, you should re-review it. I might re-review it. I don't know when, but I might come back to it. I just don't feel like I'm going to be there anytime soon. So, yeah, look, that was the CKY section with the Alien Ant Farm. The whole fight, odd scenario, whatever. The next one up I had to mention was Nail Bomb. They had, or I shouldn't say they, Max Cavalera did his own thing and just put Nail Bomb back up, for a one-off concert. This was earlier this month, I believe. I think it was a couple of days ago, actually. And it's weird because Alex wasn't part of it. Obviously, Nail Bomb is the duo that is Max Cavalera and Alex, and obviously Alex wasn't part of this. I keep thinking Alex Lifeson. That's not the case. Alex Lifeson's from Bloody Rush. His name is... I got it off to the side here. Alex... I had it off to the side here. Alex Newport, sorry. So, for those who are unfamiliar with their work, they came out with one album. They did 2 live concerts and called it a day. That was it. And there's this whole thing about Nail Bomb and the mystery surrounding them. I think it's an interesting history as well when you're looking over Nail Bomb because, they would produce a really big record back in the day. Brutally, heavy, dark, all that kind of crap that goes with it. And the fact that when they split up so suddenly, as soon as they formed pretty much, and did one concert at the Dynamo Open Air in 95, it adds to their legendary status. So I watched the footage from the new concert here that was done on the 9th, so there we go, it was only about 5 days ago. Nail Bomb performing Sick Life. The concert looks good, the performance sounds alright, the crowd doesn't seem too into it, but I don't know, I mean, I want to hear your thoughts in regards to the whole Nail Bomb reuniting thing, because when I did a short on that, a lot of people commented on it, just saying like they don't like the idea, some were intrigued, mostly people saying like, oh, they're selling out, they're doing this a ticket concert, money. And look, I mean, any tour is for money, but this is a one-off. You're talking about a one-off tour at a very small pub, or club, I should say. You're not talking about a lot of money, really. And I don't know who the others were who performed on that day. I don't know if it's under Sepultura. If it's under Soulfly and the rest of the band, can't tell. But it's certainly an interesting one. Maybe it's cheapened the whole experience. I don't have too much of a problem with them doing a one-off show. If it becomes a reoccurring occurrence, that's a bit different. And I think that might cheapen the experience. If this was just a one-off and that was it, one and done, never happens again, I'm okay with that situation. Would have been interesting. If you were at the concert, make sure to comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Speaking of concerts, we are going to go launching into a few here. So Machine Head, Lacuna Coil, In Flames, and Unearth are all announcing 2025 North American tours. So keep an eye out in regards to that one. There is going to be a new single as well out from Machine Head, apparently. Or rather, hang on, what am I reading here? Better yet, all 4 bands have also collaborated. Okay, there we go. All 4 bands have recorded a song together, and it's going to be called These Scars Won't Define Us, and that is going to be due out on November the 15th. There we go, people. So by the time this hits the airwaves, you can actually listen to this record. And I've got to say, that's an interesting one. To hear all those 4 people together. I wonder if it's going to be anything like the whole supergroup that was with Machine Head. I can't think of the Roadrunner Records or something like that. I think it was. But yeah, the Roadrunner Records supergroup method that they did. It'll be interesting. I want to hear what that song's going to sound like. I want to hear if it's any good. So yeah, look, it's interesting here. They've got to mention here, Machine Head only commented that the single features all 4 bands adding vocals for a Wu-Tang level thrash collaboration. Interesting word in there. Wu-Tang Clan level thrash. Wu-Tang, imagine if there would be like just Wu-Tang Clan kind of commentary at the beginning there. Your dragon style is no match for my swordplay. Yeah. that would be oh god. That would be interesting there. Yeah, so anyway, they have a currently unannounced new album out, due in April 2025. Ooh, there we go, Machine Head, new album in April next year. That'll be interesting there. So, yeah, anyway, there'll be obviously the tour that comes out of it. We're talking about Machine Head, Lacuna Coil, In Flames, and Unearthal on tour there. Next one up, that's going to be an interesting one. It looks like here, what have we got? The Download Festival for 2025. Judging by this has got to be in America, because there is a massive lineup here. Oh, very interesting. I just saw here, I'm reading. There is the main acts. We got Green Day, very cool. Sleep Token, cool. Okay, not bad. Korn, Weezer, very interesting. This is a very interesting mix of musicians. Bullet for My Valentine, Jimmy Eat World, nice. What does this say? Don Broco? Okay, not familiar. Spirit Box. Am I reading this right? Sex Pistols. That can't be right. Oh, okay, so it is the Sex Pistols. I see here Paul Cook, Glenn Matlock, and what have we got here? Steve Jones, and it's featuring Frank Carter. So it's got the original members of the Sex Pistols. It's just not featuring Johnny Rotten. That's going to be interesting. I wonder how that'll turn out, because, you know, Sex Pistols only really had one album. Anyway, Within Temptation, The Darkness, nice. Steel Panther, ha, okay. McFly, Apocalyptica, okay. Yeah, Cradle of Filth, I don't know what the bloody hell that one says. It's some sneeze guard looking metal band. And sixth, and then we've got also Airborne, Alien Ant Farm, Bleed From Within, Boston Manor, and CKY. That's why I laughed, because on this little tour here, CKY and Alien Ant Farm are going to be performing again, and that is going to be awesome. That's going to be awkward, because imagine, you know, they're just behind there. They're one of the low acts on this list anyway. But imagine they just like kick up a fight again, and it's just like old school festivals, like all over again. Yeah, let's get some fighting back. And there's obviously the mention of The Darkness and Steel Panther, both bands that kind of parody each other. That's interesting as hell, because Steel Panther parodies the whole kind of hair metal scene and living up to the songs that they write. And The Darkness just seems to be the band that they almost they seem to be taking the, I don't know, the whole experience that The Darkness offer, but putting it on crack. The Darkness are a fantastic band, and I would love to see them performing. But to see them with Steel Panther, it just seems like, oh my god, it's almost like seeing the parody of the band itself performing. So that would be freaking funny as hell. Sex Pistols, as I mentioned, are performing. That's all the original members minus Johnny Rotten. Very odd, very odd. I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, that's certainly a question mark. Spirit Box would be cool. Jimmy Eat World would be awesome. Bullet for My Valentine, yeah, not bad. Weezer, yeah, not bad again. And then obviously the big lineups: Green Day, Sleep Token, and Korn. This is a very weird lineup of musicians. You know, you've got some new metal here, some punk there, some modern, fuck knows what, when you're talking about Sleep Token, I don't know what you call them. Then you got, you know, Cradle of Filth amongst them all, with Weezer and then Sex Pistols. I mean, shit, this is the weirdest lineup I've ever seen. So I don't know what to make of this. This is certainly an interesting one. There's other members. There's also other bands and stuff like that. It looks like the list goes on. This is just the major ones. Eagles of Death. Yeah, I'm reading here as well. Other bands that'll be on here will be Eagles of Death Metal, Filter. That's awesome. Holy Wars, Jerry Cantrell, nice. Ginger. Damn, this is a big lineup. Meshuggah. This can't be right. Why didn't they mention Meshuggah? What is wrong with this thing? The full lineup outside of the three aforementioned headliners. Okay. What is this? Day one for a festival? This has got to be American here. You know, because, I mean, if Meshuggah's on there, they should be at the top of the list. That's very weird. That's very weird they didn't mention them amongst other ones. Who else we got? Turbo Negro. Interesting. Okay, Turbo Negro are also going to be on there. And Orbit Culture. Nice. North Lane. Good on ya. Hell yeah, boys. Lorna Shore. Okay, this is that's a big lineup. There is like 40 or 50 bands here, just without mentioning all of them. But I don't know, it's a weird lineup, that's for sure. Speaking of bands that are getting back together, though, it seems that there is news that Slayer is going to be doing a reunion moving into 2025, and they will be headlining the Louder Than Life Festival taking place at the Highland Festival grounds in Kentucky. That is huge news. I was at the Slayer's last Australian tour back in, 2018, I think, the Download Festival. Ozzy Osbourne was supposed to be the headlining act, but he had to pull out due to an injury with a quad bike, I believe, and then Slayer took over as the headliners. And I've got to say, I'm very proud to have been in that mosh pit for that last one. That was intense, one of the most intense mosh pits I've certainly been part of. It was crushing, and I just remember looking over to my side at one point and seeing someone with a horse mask just getting like pushed and shoved and then lifted up and then just thrown in with the rest of them. It was nuts. It was mental, but they were incredible to watch. So this is interesting because I also remember, I think Kerry King came out a couple of years ago and said we shouldn't have retired. We retired too early, and it kind of felt that way with a lot of bands and the music they were writing at the time. I always thought with the Slayer retirement and of course the announcement they wouldn't write any more music, they wouldn't tour anymore, that they left things on a high note. You know, I thought Repentless was a great record. I don't care what other people say. I love the album. But, you know, when you're going back to it, with them reuniting, does this cheapen the whole experience? I don't know. It might cheapen the experience if they go back and record some new material. That's obviously up for them to decide, because will they or won't they? That's on them. I think they feel like they certainly feel like they want to do it. I remember, Kerry definitely mentioned he wanted to do that. And obviously Kerry did release his solo album earlier this year, and I will actually be seeing Kerry King possibly at the Good Things Festival in a few weeks' time. So that's going to be a very interesting little one. But, you know, at the end of the day, hearing Slayer reunite, it feels right. Obviously Slayer's massive. They're a big act. They're awesome live. You got to see them if you haven't, so make sure to catch them if you can. Whether they do it for, I don't know, an extended period, that's a question mark. I think I don't know if they're going to be doing it or not. So we'll see what we'll see what happens, I guess, out of this. Now, speaking of stuff that is reunited, Jon Schaffer has released a statement in regards to his actions on the January 6, 2021. Of course, he was infamously captured when he went to Capitol Hill and took part in the riots that were going on after that whole election went down. So I thought it was worthy mentioning, obviously, with recent events, that around about the time that Jon Schaffer came out and made his statements was just before the election took place, just a few weeks ago. And obviously he has been sentenced, so he's got 3 years of probation, 120 hours community service, and will also have to pay $1,000 in restitution and $200 financial assessment due to his participation. He got off pretty light with this. I don't know how much he's going to be paying his lawyer fees. That's going to be the biggest catch. I know every time that Iced Earth Facebook group makes a post about we're doing a hot sauce sell-off, or this album's been reissued, everyone always comments and says the same shit, which is, oh yep, we got to pay for the lawyer fees again, do we? It's pretty funny, obviously, to find them being in this situation, John in this situation. But anyway, back to his statement, I guess. And then he says, I profoundly regret my actions on January the 6th. I haven't been a perfect man, but for the majority of my life, I've been a very productive man and have tried to live my life with integrity and a disciplined work ethic. I deeply love our country and the founding principles that have inspired people from all over the world to look at the USA as a beacon of hope for all of humanity. Having travelled the world for over 30 years and having performed in approximately 100 countries, it was always great feeling and relief when the airplane would land safely on US soil. Now he goes on to mention, when the global pandemic came upon us and chaos ensued all around the US in 2020, I was very concerned about what seemed to be a collapse of our country and the rule of law. So in a sense, it sounds like he's almost getting caught up with the conspiracy theories in regards to, COVID, the lockdowns, and that shit that was going on. make of that what you will, but that's how I'm reading this part of it anyway. It's a statement. It's a very well-written statement. I've read it earlier, but anyway. When the 2020 election took place, and I saw many public officials and media outlets reporting that the election was stolen, my concern deepened. Now, this was certainly, the ramifications for this was certainly felt, because Fox, I think, got sued by whoever the name of the people who did the elections, or the ballots, whatever the shit they were. They got sued for billions of dollars. I believe billions with a B, not M. They got massively sued for, obviously, the news reports that were coming out at the time and all that shit. So there was ramifications in regards to that, and obviously the events that happened, and hopefully we've moved past this. But anyway, so obviously he's getting swept up by the news reports and all that. This led to my decision to go to DC and have my voice heard. I'm not excusing my impulsive behaviour. I was wrong, and I take ownership of my actions. I own the fact that I made a huge mistake, and I wish I never would have gone there. We all do. In fact, the consequences have been devastating on my life, family, friends, business, colleagues, and business partners. Business? You sell hot sauce. I don't know any other business that he's talking about. Anyway, I haven't followed him that much. Anyway, I knew immediately that I had let my emotions get the best of me and made a terrible mistake. I drove home to Indiana the following morning on Thursday, January the 7th, 2021, and on the 8th I found my attorneys, and at my request they immediately reached out to the authorities. I willingly surrendered and cooperated with authorities. Now, that is true. He did come when he was noticed as part of the crowd. And it was noticed pretty much the day it happened. It was very early on. He did come forth very quickly. And I don't know if it's because he was noticed. This is a hard part about reading into this, right? Was it because he was noticed that he came forth, or was it because of his regret? So this is the question, I guess. Is he genuine? And I guess there's a statement right towards the end that you can read into that says yes or no to that. Now, initially I was charged with multiple serious federal felony offences, and feared I may spend the rest of my life in prison. This is true. I remember he was facing big years at some point. I spent several months in custody following my self-surrender. I was placed in solitary confinement with horrendous conditions, which was an extremely traumatic experience. I became the first person of the hundreds of co-defendants to enter a guilty plea, and have now been sentenced to probation. So very, if he's one of the first people, then that kind of sets the ground mark, if I'm remembering right. When anything new happens in regards to law, it seems, obviously I forget what they call it, a benchmark or something like that in regards to law. Anyway, further on to this statement. Until now, I have resisted the strong urge to issue a public statement due to my ongoing cooperation and the wishes of federal authorities. This extended period of my silence has added additional challenges to my life as a public person. Very true. Since the beginning, I wanted to express my remorse for my actions and address the legitimate concerns of my fans worldwide. I watched as one media outlet after the next dragged my reputation through the mud and condemned me for not making any statement. However, I tried. Yeah, look, this. You could have always made a statement. I'm sure your lawyers would probably have told you to shut up, and maybe that's one thing. But you could have always made a statement. That's not holding you back. However, I tried to be as productive as possible in lieu of my very damaged reputation and career. This is true. He has taken a massive dive. This whole situation has been extremely difficult. However, I know that I have become a better man because of it. I used to stay so busy that I didn't have much time for self-reflection. In these last 3.5 years, that's mostly what I've done. I have become a member of a wonderful church and improved myself spiritually, mentally, and physically. This personal revival has inspired me to continue writing and recording music. Good to hear. I love Iced Earth and their music. I'm certain there will be a very positive outlook in my future artistic creations. We always want positive outlook. He's found God, people. I don't know if we can trust him anymore. I say that because obviously if you know Iced Earth and their music, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, to my fans who have continued to support me throughout this deeply embarrassing ordeal, I want to apologise for letting you down and thank you for keeping me going. I know there's people who are strongly supporting him for the music, and then there are people who are strongly supporting him because of other means. And I want to separate myself here because I do support Jon Schaffer, but I support his music. That is it. His decisions, whether or not true from this statement, is it's up to you to interpret. I was very concerned when he was there and when he was photographed. I was like, oh shit, what have you done? That was my first statement. And I've also covered Jon Schaffer on an episode called Controversial Artists. Do you support these musicians or not? In which we talk about musicians doing controversial things and then whether or not you can still listen to their music. And I covered them, and I covered Jon Schaffer and Iced Earth, and I said, yes, I would definitely be listening to his music. And I still do to this day. I love his music. I think Iced Earth is a fantastic band. And later next year, I'm also going to be doing a retro review episode on one of their albums. I'm not going to tell you what one yet. So anyway, I'll still listen to Iced Earth, and I'll be curious to see what he writes. Anyway, back to the statement. To those fans who I have lost due to my decisions that day, I certainly understand. I humbly ask everyone to allow me to demonstrate through my actions how far I've come. I wish to continue to use my art to unite people and never to divide. Now, this is the statement, of course, signed off sincerely Jon Schaffer. This is the statement that, of course, Jon Schaffer has written in regards to, it's a very well-written statement. He knows how to certainly write things in a manner. And, as I said, it's a bit open to your interpretation, I guess, in regards to whether or not he feels like he's going to turn a corner, I guess. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think he will. It's just yet to be seen what direction that'll be. And with this whole current situation going down, it'll be interesting to see, even if he relapses, for example, or makes public outcries. Because prior to, obviously, 2016 and all that, most of these musicians didn't have a political opinion. They just shut up and played metal. Jon was, for most of the part, to my knowledge anyway, one of those musicians. And then obviously 2020 comes around, or 2021 comes around, and it's a whole different ballpark all of a sudden. So I'm interested to see the music that he's going to write moving forward. I think one of the biggest problems that was the outcome from him being spotted was, at the election, of course, one of the biggest things that came from him being spotted was the fact that a lot of the band members quit right at that point. In fact, I'm just quickly checking Wikipedia here. I think Jon is the only member now of Iced Earth. Yeah, it looks like everyone has just said, "Nah, fuck this, I'm out," and just dropped the, mic, I guess, if you will, and just walked away from Iced Earth. And understandably so, I suppose. So yeah, it's very dark in regards to what's happened here, because Stu Block, he was a pretty good singer. There was what was the other ones? We had the drummer here, Brent Smedley. I believe he was a constant within the band. He would come and go, but he's been there for quite a few times during the biggest periods of their career, so he's left as well. Luke Appleton, the bass player, couldn't really comment, but he was on the last two records. There was also Jake Dreyer in regard to, what a name, Jake Dreyer? Dreyer? How do I say that? Anyway, he was on the last, he was the guitarist for the last one. And I don't know what to say. He's going to pretty much have to reassemble the band from the ground up. And look, this is a band that has had numerous lineup changes anyway. If you're looking over the timeline, it is a jumbled mess of colours and staggered colours anyway, or members that have come and gone. But Jon Schaffer has always been about, Jon Schaffer is Iced Earth. That's it. It's his band. It's like Santana. Carlos Santana has had numerous lineup changes over his time, but has always been the constant member. Jon Schaffer is Iced Earth. And of course, this has been a massive setback, as we can see here, a long gap between records. But at the end of the day, Jon Schaffer is Iced Earth. He will find other musicians. I'm just hoping they're not going to be politically motivated and all this, joining them because, you were fighting for our rights type of stuff. I hope they join him purely from a musical perspective. And I hope that that's the case. and they write music. They just shut up and play their music. Sorry, shut up and write music, and they just, maybe call back to something like Glorious Burden or the Horror Show. Let's take it back to old school metal. Let's take it back to the way it was. You're getting your inspiration not from the whole the records that were released afterwards. Sorry, the 10,000 Days or whatever you want to say. Let's take a call back to how you previously had music writing. Sorry, Framing Armageddon. That's what I was thinking of. Something Wicked Part 1. Let's take it back to like the Dark Saga. Something Wicked This Way Comes, or the Horror Show, the Glorious Burden. The Glorious Burden was a fantastic record. Let's take inspiration from something in the media, but not the political aspect. Let's take it from somewhere that traditional metal just always said, because this is a fantastic kind of thrash metal outfit, and I think one that people should really check out. But yeah, over the years they've released hit and miss records, and it hasn't helped as well the fact that they've had so many lineup changes. That has hampered them as well. Anyway, good luck to Jon Schaffer in the future. I'll be interested to see what he writes moving forward. Now, this next one I read was it's just a one-off little statement here. Trivium's Matt Heifer, whatever, thinks that everyone should try 9-string guitars. Quote, "It's so much fun to play." 9 strings? What the hell? And it's funny because even the picture is just a standard 6-string guitar. 9 strings. I mean, I know that, Deftones, they certainly fuck around with 9 strings. And it does sound cool. But that's the Deftones sound. I know that when it comes down to the whole, Stephen Carpenter's tuning and all that, he works it well, and I think that's fantastic. But I gotta ask the guitar players out there who are listening or still listening, is 9 strings too much? I've always been under the assumption 7, maybe 8, depending on what you do. This is landed into the territory of, Deftones, Meshuggah, Trivium to a degree here. It just seems like there's too much. And I just don't know if it's worthy or even should people do it. Because, when you go into 9 strings, you're playing with such a deep reverb sound that it just, I don't know. And you're down tuning it so far as well. I see it as a pointless thing, but I'm not really a guitar player, so I want to hear your comments in regards to 9-string guitars. Have you played them? Do you think it's worthwhile? Do you recommend them, even for all the money? I'm guessing that must be... that would be an expensive guitar to buy. A 9-string guitar is not a cheap item. Do you recommend, though, people should buy it? Tell me in the comment section below. Before we go into the new albums that are coming up for release, I just want to see a quick statement which was from 10 extremely underrated metal albums from the 70s, and just give a shout out to yes or no, because the mention in here is obviously the the Black Sabbath act that was coming out of the 70s, and they were a massive act. Of course, pretty much they invented heavy metal. There is no ifs and or buts. Black Sabbath invented metal the day that Tony Iommi had his finger chopped off, or his fingertips chopped off in that sheet metal accident. That was the day that heavy metal was born. Now, what in this... I'm just curious to see what these 10 bands are, or 10 albums in regards to around about the 1970s and metal. And anyway, let's read it off this list here. Lucifer's Friend. I don't know that one. I've never heard of Lucifer's Friend. Couldn't comment, but the statement here is this isn't some Lost Judas Priest or Led Zeppelin album. It's from some German band. Interesting. And even, I think sounds like Rob Halford has even mentioned this one here. The opening track, Ride the Sky, has a strong immigrant song vibe, but it came out at the exact same time Led Zeppelin 3 did. That's why it got, it failed to obviously get anywhere. So obviously Led Zeppelin 3 was a big album, so that's I can understand that statement there. Bulbous Creation, You Won't Remember Dying. What an odd sounding album. And band, Bulbous Creation. What the... Anyway, the album's most memorable song is Satan, which plays like a chiller version of Sabbath's Hand of Doom. Interesting. Very interesting. I don't know that one either. Leaf Hound, Growers of Mushroom. These damn hippies could lay down some heavy licks, though Leaf Hound were very, very much a hard rock band. They tapped into that proto-metal grooves on their early 70s debut album, Growers of Mushroom. Yeah, Growers of Mushroom, eh? I can see where the inspiration came from that record. But anyway, it sounds like they kind of lent into early stoner metal from what it's been described here. Let's see, Captain Beyond, all these self-titled, all these debut records and just self-titled here. Captain Beyond is the definition of underrated, especially when it comes to their 1972 album. Captain Beyond is the band's heaviest release, featuring original Deep Purple vocalist Rod Evans. Interesting. And hang on, I take that back. Along with members of Iron Butterfly and Johnny Winter's band. I'm going to go listen to this album after this because that's really cool. Captain Beyond it's almost like a super group of 60s era bands here, talking about, of course, Deep Purple and Iron Butterfly and Johnny Winter. So Captain Beyond, I have to go and listen to that after recording this because damn, that sounds pretty interesting. Anyway, and it taps perfectly into that 70s experimental energy. Experimental, you say? Dubious. Yeah, I'm not too... don't really love the experimental of that era. Anyway, flower traveling band Satori. I feel like I've heard this band before. Anyway, Japan. Japan's band, flower traveling band, released one of the heaviest albums people had ever heard in 1971. Satori sounds like a faster, more progressive Black Sabbath, but it's also experimental and unhinged that it still blows minds. Interesting. So that sounds like another band that I might want to check out as well. Flower Traveling Band. I feel like I've already listened to one or two of them tracks. What else do we have here? Riot, Rock City. Yeah, good point there. That's an interesting one. I don't see anything that... Yeah, new wave of British heavy metal, they just said it's very common in regards to that one. So yeah, definitely. Buffalo, Volcanic Rock. And what else we got? Wicked Lady, Psychotic Overkill. I don't know how much more you can say. There are some weird band names out here. Iron Claw, again, another debut record. These songs were lost for nearly 40 years before finally seeing a release in 2009. Wow. Written between 1970 and 74, the songs on Iron Claw's self-titled debut album feature some of the heaviest guitar tones of the age. This is such doomy, bleak music. Who else would write a song like Skull Crusher in 1970? That's true. That sounds like a bloody Slayer track if ever I've heard it. Do yourself a favour, let's jam to this album. Yeah, right. Warlord again. Yeah, that sounds like another thing. So, that's an interesting one. There is certainly some stuff there to check out, I guess. Some very unknown bands and unheard of stuff from back in the 70s. I'll be listening to a few of those for sure after this one. Now we jump into the final segment, which is going to be the new albums that will be coming out as of today. So keep an ear out for these ones because there are certainly some big names coming out. And of course the first one, As I Lay Dying Through Storms Ahead. Now this is going to be marred with a lot of controversy in regards to, of course, half the bloody group has just left because of various reasons. And I think we're going to be discussing this on another episode, an upcoming episode of Controversial Artists. Because, As I Lay Dying has a very controversial history, if you haven't heard, by the way. It involves, hiring assassins even. So that's going to be an interesting album, because what caused this whole, storm that was seemed to be ahead of them, and all the band members to leave. It's definitely been one of those question marks that has seen the band almost implode in 1 week. Very interesting. Anyway, Empires of Eden, Gardens of Time. Some of these might be re-releases, by the way. Full of Hell and Andrew Nolan, Scraping the Divine, Furs, Cosmic Stimulation of Dark Fantasies. Iron Maiden has the Power Slave 40th Anniversary Edition. Of course, Power Slave celebrating its 40th anniversary earlier this year. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm sure to have rare tracks that haven't been heard of, live versions, and all that good stuff that you can expect. John Wetton, Consentus, the John Wetton live collection volume 1. Oof, what a name. Less Than Jake, Uncharted. Interesting. Now this is going to be the big one, I think, that everyone's going to be talking about, the most divisive album of the week, if not year. And we're going to be talking about Linkin Park from Zero. I'm definitely going to be covering this as well for a 5-minute review. I think I'm also going to be part of a panel for Chill Dude on the Couch, and we're going to be discussing from Zero, saying, is this a bad album or not? So I'm going to be very intrigued by this record because I got to come to it with open ears. Obviously, there is the Linkin Park fan in me from the early days, and I've not been a fan of them, past the third album. So, coming up with them releasing new music under the new lead singer, what's her name, Emily Armstrong, is going to be interesting because they're going to separate that aspect of her works, I guess, to what was what was released prior. Sorry, I should say. So it's going to be a very interesting album, and it's going to be one that's going to be very difficult to rate as well. That'll be an interesting one. So tomorrow's going to be big news for that one, or today, I should say. At Lineville, Supernatural, of course, Mammoth Grinder, Undying Spectral Resonance EP. God, I can't talk. And Poppy, Negative Spaces, Primal Code, Opaque Fixation. That'll be interesting sounding one. Serena Telly, Black and White Sessions. Sodom, Tapping the Vein. This is a re-release as well. Star Chaser, Into the Great Unknown. Interesting, Star Chaser. Why do I know that name? I feel like I've covered them even. Steel Panther, Feel the Steel, the 15th Anniversary Edition. Okay, yeah, cool. Good album. Thrown Into Existence, Passageways EP. Oh my gosh, this next one I am not going to be able to pronounce. Thigh Catafalque. Yeah, that'll do. And then it's got the Roman numerals 12, and I can't pronounce that. I literally cannot pronounce what this word is. It's written in another language. Then we've got Trapeze, Lost Tapes Volume 2, Voodoo Circle, Hail to the King, and Wasted Youth. Youth and Board, the completed Wasted Youth. Interesting. So that is the mix of all the songs that are coming out, albums that'll be coming out today. Keep an ear out for those ones. I'm glad that you can make it all the way through this episode, that we're just talking, of course, about music, the events in the world, and what keeps it spinning. As always, thank you for coming towards the end of this one, and also give me a shout out. What should I name this whole series? I don't know. I don't have a name yet, as I've said. Comment below. Write what your thoughts are. I should name it, and maybe I'll put it to a vote or something like that, and whoever wins, we'll name the show after that. That's a bad idea, actually. Now I'm thinking about it. You put something to the internet for the internet to vote, and it's always turned out bad. It has always turned out to be a bad decision. Anyway, let's see what happens. But enjoy the week, and hopefully I'll keep this up for next week and see you in that time when we can discuss more music. So take it easy, everyone. You have a great day, and you stay spicy out there.